Hello world. Naff. Slightly old-fashioned British slang for not very good. Princess Anne once famously told somebody to naff off, for example. Now, the picture behind me, very poorly generated by AI, it has to be said. Look at me, look at my face here. Really not too bad. Look at it behind me. I look like I've been dipped in a chip pan. But it's illustrating what I mean by naff ways of cleaning records. If I come and stand over here. So standing here, you can see that I'm at a sink, illustrating to you a very naff way of cleaning records. I do like what's written on the door, however. The door says, please handle with care. These records mean a lot to someone. And I suppose that's the point of making this video. I haven't made a video on record care for about 4 years now. And some of these things need to be stated again. Yesterday, in the bargain bins of my local second-hand record shop, I found part 1 of the Beatles' rock and roll music. I've had part 2 since I was a child in the 1980s, but never got part 1 for some reason. This was a budget re-release of a double LP compilation called The Beatles Rock and Roll. Well, this is called The Beatles Rock and Roll Music Volume 1, and it really needs a clean. I have played it. It sounds really rather good, but I can tell that there's a lot of dust and whatever. It needs a clean. And I was reminded of an article I wrote for Ashley Cox's audio appraisal website called 5 Naff Ways to Clean Your Records. Now, I say naff. Method 5 is what I would steer a lot of people on a budget to. It has its disadvantages, but it is really the most sensible way of cleaning records. I don't know what the logic was. I probably once used to know the logic of the order of the other 4, but in any case, here's the article. Having cleaned more records than I've had hot dinners, I somehow believe I am in the privileged position to pontificate on the worst ways to do this. I've only tried a couple of the following methods, I promise. The list runs from least to most naff. Number 5, the bath method. The Nosti Disco Anti-Stat is the most famous example of this breed. Essentially, you pour a relatively large quantity of record cleaning fluid into an elliptical bath-shaped tray. The tray is equipped with brushes. Think of the left and right brushes of a car wash. The record is screwed via the paper label into 2 clamps, and these are hooked over the tray so that the record is sandwiched in between the brushes. The record is then rotated by hand so that it becomes coated in the fluid and receives a scrub. You then unscrew the record and place it vertically into a drying rack. Think of a washing up drying rack. Drying it vertically ensures that no more dust is attracted to your record, but it will take at least 40 to 45 minutes to dry, far longer than the 20-minute claim in the literature. And playing a record that's even a tiny bit wet can ruin an expensive stylus. So, on the plus side, the literature does warn against using any kind of cloth to wipe dry a wet record. Don't do it. Just wait for it to dry. If you're using proper record cleaning fluid, it's mainly isopropyl alcohol, so it will evaporate quite quickly. I actually would recommend this method for casual listeners of vinyl with small to modest sized collections. The actual kit is relatively cheap. Now, I don't know about this now. This was 9 years ago I wrote this article. I don't even know if the Nosti Disco Anti-Stat is still available. There have been imitators since, so I'm sure that things like it are available, even if the actual Nosti one isn't. But as I say, I don't know. So the actual kit is relatively cheap and it works fairly well. However, its effectiveness relies on an understandable misconception in that the brushes actually clean the record when in fact they don't. The grooves on a record are far finer than a human hair, and no brush could even hope to penetrate them. It's the fluid that needs to penetrate the grooves. Being as how the record is cleaned vertically, most of the fluid is actually falling off the record and back into the bath and not getting to the areas where it's most needed. It's then put to dry again standing on its edge where the fluid is allowed to evaporate. Thus, it can only really claim to clear the surface dirt and fingerprints off a record, and any dirt residing in the grooves stays resolutely put. Indeed, I used this method for a good few years, and it wasn't unknown for my dear Goldring 1042 cartridge stroke stylus to pick up far more dirt that the anti-stat had only loosened, and for sound quality to deteriorate. And very rarely, I'm putting in here very rarely, hardly ever happened. Once or twice this happened immediately after cleaning and drying a record with the anti-stat. Was for the arm to go flying across the record because the needle had picked up so much fluff. Really, you need to spot when it's picking up fluff and go and rescue it and blow the fluff away from the stylus tip before you carry on. A record is easily and relatively cheaply priced. A stylus isn't. There are also economic considerations. A bottle of record cleaning fluid that half deserves the title costs around 20 That was in 2017. The bath method requires 250 to 300 millilitres of this to be used at a time, whether you're cleaning one record or several. The kit contains a funnel and a set of filters so that leftover fluid can be poured into a second clean bottle and reused. The filters are supposed to catch any dirty residue that's come off your records. But that leftover fluid is still contaminated even after cleaning only one record. So a litre of fluid can clean around 100 sides, 50 12-inch or 7-inch records, it doesn't matter. In fact, 7-inch records need more fluid rather than less because they're smaller. So you need to top up the bath further so that you catch them as the thing's going round. Therefore, whilst the initial outlay of the kit is cheap, once a collection expands over a certain size, the amount of cleaning fluid required to keep it all clean can mean that the bath method soon becomes a false economy. By contrast, 250 ml of the same fluid when used on a vacuum system such as the Moth can clean at least 70 to 80 sides or 35 to 40 records. Number 4, over elaborate ritualistic cleaning or cleaning a record more times than necessary. 2 cleans with an isopropyl alcohol based fluid and then a once over with La du Sang. Anybody? Sounds like real fun. I wonder if anyone ever told these super nerds that their Diana Krall LPs would be just as clean and playable with just a quick spin on the Moth and a few drops of isopropyl alcohol. Also, I would suggest that once a year would be enough to clean a well-played treasure, and less often for those that spend less time on the turntable. The hi-fi hobby is about playing and enjoying music, not cleaning it. Get down to those charity shops and find some great records instead. Number 3, homemade fluids. Not that I have anything against someone who can lay their hands cheaply on some distilled, not tap or faucet water and 70% proof isopropyl alcohol and mixes a 3-part water, 1-part alcohol based solution. It's when so-called experts, read YouTubers, start telling you to add household cleaning detergents that things become somewhat dangerous. You'd never know what's in these things. And just because a particular brand worked well for you to then come onto YouTube and show your bottle of whatever washing up liquid, what's this one called, bubbly washing up liquid, that's not going to be available all over the world. Different solutions, different mixes of things are used in things and they update them and you don't know what's in one batch from one place to the next. So steer clear of them, and you don't know what they're going to do to your record. At least with the well-known brands, there's actually some science gone into this. There's actually trials and tests that are done to make sure that although no record cleaning method is absolutely foolproof and works wonders all the time, you won't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. But with the reputable brands of record cleaning fluid, at least you know it's safe. Number 2, glue. PVA glue is fabulous, especially if, like me, you've ever had a gang of kids around a table making spaceships out of squeezy bottles, cornflake packets and tin foil tubes, but not for cleaning records. In theory, it should work very well, since it dries into a plastic-like film which can then be peeled off, taking 20 years worth of dust along with it. But the resultant PVA disc contains a mirror imprint of the grooves on the record it was cleaning. It is all too tempting to try playing this piece of glue on one's record player. No, but it's being done on YouTube. And that's where it belongs. Someone else's record collection, not yours. B, it takes one heck of a long time to dry. And then you can only clean one side at a time. It's also very messy and relatively expensive. C, a tiny speck of sticky glue, small enough to avoid detection by the human eye, could be nestling in those grooves, ready to pounce on your lovely Autofond condenser stylus and ruin it. Number 1, any method that relies on using a cloth to wipe a record clean or dry. Hello? I thought we were supposed to be getting dust out of the record, not pushing it further in. So I believe the only method of cleaning a record effectively is by the vacuum method. These machines resemble a somewhat Heath Robinson attempt at a turntable, except that where one would normally expect a tone arm, there is what can only be described as a Hoover attachment. The record is placed on the platter and set in motion. A few drops of fluid, either isopropyl based or the aforementioned La du Sang, are squirted onto the revolving disc and spread around with a soft brush so that it forms a film of fluid on the surface of the record. This is then vacuumed away, along with 20 years worth of dust, and the process is repeated on the other side of the record. The end result is a clean, dry record that uses an nth of the fluid required by the bath method, that sounds a bit clearer and more detailed than it did before it was cleaned, and most importantly, it won't contain stylus damaging dirt. The drawback of these machines is that even the cheapest of them will cost more than a budget hi-fi turntable, but their effectiveness, longevity and frugality make them well worth the initial investment, particularly for those with expensive turntable and cartridge configurations and large collections of records. And that's really all I've got to say. Look after your records and they'll look after you with years and years of pleasure. Remember to like. Press the hype button if you see it. Subscribe. Share if you dare. Consider a super thanks if you've really enjoyed the video. I'll be your best friend. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.